Hello, internet friends! It's been raining off and on all week, and that always gets me into the coziest of cozy moods. Although, to be honest, I'm always in the mood for some cozy. There's just something chef's kiss about cuddling up under a warm blanket while the rain is pelting down outside, playing a game that lulls me into a sense of relaxation that I crave after a long day of typing away at my desk. And these little retro handhelds are the perfect things to do that on. They don't give me any wrist fatigue when I'm holding them up above my face. And when I'm holding them sideways in bed to cuddle, they're also pretty perfect. Especially this little guy, which I absolutely adore for its cute DMG aesthetics. So, I thought I'd share with you some of the cozy games that I love to play on my retro handhelds. Keep in mind that cozy is a state of mind, and so it can mean so many things for so many different people. My definition of cozy might be completely different from yours, and that's completely fine. The games on this list are just the ones I find personally extremely cozy. Your definition of cozy might be completely different from mine, and that's okay. If your favorite game didn't make it onto this list, please feel free to drop a comment down below and tell me all about it. I'm so excited to geek out with you guys about these cozy games. Okay, we should get on with our list. The first one on the list is Cat Wrap for Game Boy. This is a puzzle game in which you can control one of two adorable cat girls as you go around a room and try to clear it of bad guys. There are various obstacles in your path that you'll have to traverse in order to get to the bad guys, but once you kick them all off the screen, you're free to move on to the next level. You can hit this handy dandy rewind button to rewind your moves once you've got the lay of the land, and you probably will need to do this the further into the game you get. The nice thing about this game is that there is no time limit, so you can spend as long as you need to figure out these puzzles, and that makes it an extra chill game to play. It's such a cute little gem that lovers of cat girls and puzzles should find really enjoyable. I happen to be a fan of both those things, so naturally I find this game delightful, and I hope you will too. So, it might be quite obvious that I love puzzle games on retro handhelds. I put in countless hours on Tetris and Dr. Mario, which are just absolute staples of retro gaming for me. It comes as no surprise that the next game on the list for me is Picross. Now, Picross, or Picross, I'm not sure which is right here, is actually the name of the Nintendo franchise that features nonogram puzzle games. These are fun little logic puzzles in which your task is to create an image by filling in or leaving blank some squares on a grid. You have some numbers that indicate how many squares in sections are filled in. Each numbered section must include at least one empty square in between it and the next section. Using this information, you can deduce which squares aren't filled in and which squares are, and you keep going until a picture forms. For example, in this level, I know that this column has 0 filled-in squares, so I can block those off as empty squares. In this section, I know there should be 5 squares filled in, but I don't know where it starts. So we're looking for the spaces that intersect based on what position the entire section starts in. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that way, and fill in the overlapping squares. Logic. Lately, I've been playing Mario's Picross every night before bed as a winding down game, and it's perfect for that. There are many versions of Picross to play. My favorite is probably Mario's Picross for the Game Boy, but I just like Game Boy games. Pokemon Picross is also a lot of fun, and for newer gens like DS and 3DS, there are a lot of options to choose from, even 3D ones. Okay, enough puzzle games for now. I know some people just aren't into them. I don't know who or why or how, but we must make allowances for differences in taste. So the next one is a child-rearing game. Princess Maker 2 is the only game in the Princess Maker series that I've played. I remember being a teenager on the internet, searching for cute games to play that would tickle my girly fancy, and the English port of Princess Maker 2 came on my radar. I prefer to play this game on my computer because the original was a DOS game, but in a pinch, you can also emulate it through the DOS Retro Arch Core on your favorite handheld. Either way, this game is amazing. It's like a life sim, but you take on the role of a war hero who raises a little girl from the age of 10 to 18. After the 8 years, she'll choose a future career based on the decisions that you made for her and the life experiences those decisions brought on. There are 74 possible game endings, ranging from marrying the prince and becoming a ruling queen, to being a crime boss or becoming Princess of Darkness. The gameplay for Princess Maker 2 is quite chill. You assign your charge a schedule of activities such as part-time jobs, schooling, adventure, and free time. During these activities, she can unlock relationships with certain NPCs. All of these things earn her stat points, and these stat points will determine which career path she goes down in the future. The entire 8 years takes a handful of hours to complete, and then you can start all over again and try to ruin another little girl's life. I personally would love to shoot for Princess of Darkness on my next playthrough. Speaking of games in which you simulate things, what better way to get your cozy on than diving into a run of Harvest Moon? This is a game franchise that needs no introductions, but just in case, I'll give you one anyway. The Harvest Moon franchise is a series of life/farming sim games that started in 1996, or 1997 for North America. This series is the direct predecessor of the Story of Seasons video game series, which is still ongoing today. The game follows you, the main character, as you try to restore and maintain a farm that you've inherited in a small town. In the game, you're required to manage your time each day and engage in various farming and farming-adjacent activities, such as raising livestock, foraging, and charming the pants off the village singles. For those of you who adore farming life sims like me, Harvest Moon is considered by many to be the pioneer of the farming sim genre and an inspiration for Concerned Ape's Stardew Valley. My favorite of these earlier games is probably Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town, for the Game Boy Advance. Farming sims let us escape into an idyllic world to a simpler reality where all we need to worry about is doing some gardening, harvesting some crops, and flirting with some cuties. I absolutely adore them, and if you do too, consider checking one of the Harvest Moon titles out on your retro handheld. And speaking of a simpler reality, the next game on our list is definitely that. You will probably have encountered it, unless you've been living under a rock somewhere. Animal Crossing is one of my favorite gaming franchises of all time, and I can honestly say that playing New Horizons on the Switch in 2020 was what reignited my love of video games in general. Like Harvest Moon, this franchise needs no introductions, but I also had to include it on this list because, I don't know, it just belongs here. I'm not going to go too much into Harvest Moon because you all know what it's about, but I will say that Wild World for the DS plays extremely well on the Miu Mini Plus through the Drastic emulator, and if you've got some time to kill and want to dive deep into relaxation and hang out with some of your talking animal friends, catching fish and snagging bugs, then consider checking out Wild World. It's not quite as polished as New Leaf or New Horizons, but it's got so much charm and is a perfect pick-me-up whenever I dip my toes back in. The next game on the list is Monster Rancher Advance 2. I adore Monster Rancher 2 for the PS1. It was basically the first PlayStation game I played ever, and it holds a special place in my heart. For those of you who aren't familiar with this game franchise, it's like a cross between Pokemon and, I don't know, Princess Maker? I guess you could say it's like Pokemon, but if you're more focused on breeding and raising one monster as opposed to collecting them all. Your goal is to raise monsters to fight in battle tournaments and get the best ranking possible. And you do that by deciding how your monster will be spending its time and what traits you want to focus on. You can also go exploring on little side quests, and of course you'll be battling other monsters. The gameplay is quite varied in this one, a mix of Pokemon-like battle and life sim strategy. In the original PS1 game, you needed to generate monsters by inserting readable CDs. I have lost count of how many CDs I inserted into the PS1 to try and get different creatures. That was a huge chunk of the charm for me. Unfortunately, it's not super easy to emulate this on a retro handheld, so Monster Rancher Advance 2 is my next to best option. In this Game Boy Advance version, you enter keywords and phrases to generate monsters instead. You can also combine monsters to breed them and create new monsters with traits from both parents. The unique thing about Monster Rancher games, and this is kind of a sad thing, is that your monsters all have limited lifespans. They get old and die, and so you've really got to manage your time and try your best to get to the top before your monster departs for the afterlife. I was devastated the first time this happened, but I think it's quite nice to look back on the monster's life and on its achievements, and then be able to look forward to raising a new one in its place. But you know, there's always save states if you can't bear to let a certain one go. Alright, we've arrived at the very end of my list. And last but not least is Bishoujo Senshi Sailor Moon Another Story for the Super Famicom. You may or may not have noticed this about me, but I love Sailor Moon. It was my first introduction to the lovely world of anime. Waking up extra early to catch that daily episode of Sailor Moon every morning before school is a core memory for me, and I'm always looking for more ways to have a little bit Sailor Moon in my life. My very first encounter with retro emulation came in the form of an English patch of Sailor Moon Another Story, which was only released in Japan for the Super Famicom. I was obsessed with getting as much Sailor Moon content as possible as a young kid, and honestly, as an adult as well. So when I discovered there was an entire RPG that takes place in the Sailor Moon universe, with many of my favorite characters, I had to play it. Fortunately, amazing fan translators have made English patches possible. I mentioned earlier that cozy is a state of mind, and that's especially true for this last game on my list. I used to have literal dreams of more Sailor Moon content as a child, so getting to spend a few hours transported into a pixelated Sailor Moon world is amazing. The game is turn-based, the graphics are impeccable, and the music fits very well with the Sailor Moon theme and aesthetic. I adore this game, and I hope it'll give you the same cozy vibes it gives me every time I start it up. And that concludes my list of the cozy retro games that you can play on your retro handhelds. I tried to stick to retro games that you could play on any of the handhelds that you own, even the lower end ones, because I do think that gaming on a budget is a worthwhile endeavor. I really hope you enjoyed this video, internet friends. If I did miss your favorite cozy retro game, please do tell me all about it in the comments below. Or better yet, visit my Discord server and let's have a conversation about it. If you did like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I will send you all the warm and fuzzy gratitude feels. Until next time, please be kind to yourself, be kind to everyone else, and happy gaming. Bye bye.